We are on day 23 of the conflict. The United States has issued a 48-hour ultimatum: reopen the Strait of Hormuz, or the U.S. military will begin strikes on Iran's power grid. In response, Iranian officials have threatened to target the 10 largest power stations across the neighboring Gulf states if their own infrastructure is hit. This chart shows the volume of global energy moving through this single point: 20% of the world's total oil supply and 20% of its liquid natural gas must physically pass through this waterway every day. In the last 3 weeks, a coalition led by the United States has decimated Iran's conventional maritime strength. Over 130 Iranian vessels have been destroyed, effectively removing their traditional navy from the board. Despite losing their fleet, the Iranian regime continues to hold the global economy hostage. By paralyzing this route, they have forced insurance rates to unprecedented levels and halted the flow of international trade. Iran's actual weapon is a geostrategic nuclear bomb built directly into the geography of the waterway. The Strait of Hormuz is the only maritime exit for energy leaving the Persian Gulf. On a map, the strait spans 33 kilometers, but the navigable deep water lane required for supertankers is far narrower. Ships are restricted to a corridor only 3.7 kilometers wide, just enough room for 2 tankers to pass. Historically known as the Lion's Trap, this geography facilitates asymmetric warfare. Because the deep water lane is so tight and surrounded by shallow water, it strips away the advantages of a traditional large-scale navy. Closing this corridor requires nothing more than simple sea mines. These contact mines, explosive devices that detonate upon impact with a ship's hull, can be easily sown throughout the narrow 3.7-kilometer lane. Iran supports these mines with an estimated 1,000 IRGC fast attack boats. These small, armed vessels operate in swarms, launching from the jagged coastline to strike commercial ships before disappearing into the shallows. This strategy is rooted in a psychological doctrine known as the Samson Option. The regime is prepared to oversee the total destruction of its own country rather than surrender its hold on power. It mirrors the final orders of 1945, where leadership demanded the destruction of their own infrastructure as the enemy approached. The IRGC operates on the belief that if their system of governance falls, the nation of Iran itself has no remaining value and should be left in ruins. This standoff is maintained through intelligence provided by Russia and China. These allies provide real-time satellite coordinates of U.S. fighter jets the moment they leave the runway, allowing Iranian forces to anticipate strikes. Standard military deterrence fails when an enemy views the total destruction of their own country as an acceptable cost of doing business. With the 3.7-kilometer lane functionally closed by fear and rising insurance costs, the U.S. military must choose between 4 tactical responses. Option 1 follows the 1980s playbook: a massive 22-nation coalition to physically escort commercial tankers through the strait, using warships to shield them from attack. Option 2 is a direct economic counterstrike: the seizure of Karg Island. By taking control of Iran's primary oil export hub, the U.S. could physically cut off the regime's main source of funding. Option 3 involves a large-scale amphibious assault to occupy the 7 Iranian islands surrounding the strait. Taking these islands is the only way to physically neutralize the coastal missile sites and drone launch pads. Option 4 is the execution of the president's ultimatum: the systematic dismantling of Iran's domestic energy grid until the blockade is lifted. Simply waiting is not a viable strategy. A vacuum of power in the Middle East invites rival nations to step in and fill the void. China and India are already negotiating side deals for energy, waiting to see if the United States fails to secure the waterway for the international community. This confrontation targets the foundational rules of the global maritime system. At stake is the U.S. Navy's historical role as the ultimate guarantor of free trade. If this waterway remains closed, the ability of any nation to trade securely across the ocean is brought into question. If a rogue state can weaponize 3.7 kilometers of water to trigger a global recession, the entire network of globalized trade is vulnerable to any actor with a few mines and a jagged coastline.